All right, welcome back. Today we're looking at the carbon cycle and perhaps the water cycle. By now, you should have downloaded your atmosphere slide set 3, your third slide set, and you should be familiar with the few slides. I think there's like 6 that are on there. It's called the Atmosphere Third Set. So, I'd like to dive right into the carbon cycle. Now, the carbon cycle is something that I alluded to previously in terms of a very strong relationship between plants and animals and the environment. Very much like the nitrogen cycle, where gaseous, useless in the gaseous form nitrogen needs to be stuck to other atoms or molecules to make usable compounds by organisms. Carbon is similar. Okay? Now, carbon, a molecule, or excuse me, an atom, carbon is an element. Carbon is the foundation upon which every living thing is built. There's a whole field of study called organic chemistry, and organic chemistry deals 100% only with molecules containing a carbon atom. Period. Take anything that was ever alive: wood, grass, hay, pine straw, anything, any plant, any animal, a steak, a hamburger, chicken, wings, whatever material that was once alive. If you were to burn that material, ashes are left. And those ashes are primarily carbon. Burn a match is made out of paper or wood, both directly from trees. You burn that match, and what's left over is that black carbon. Some people that still haven't figured out cigarettes are terrible for you, that smoke cigarettes, tobacco, they smoke it, it's got paper wrapped around it, it's ground up plant leaves. There's an ashtray full of stinky gray or black carbon ashes. So carbon is the building block of literally everything organic or alive. Okay? And this carbon comes from, you guessed it, the atmosphere. Carbon dioxide is a single atom of carbon linked to 2 atoms of oxygen, making CO2. Carbon dioxide. And this very, very low in terms of component, low abundancy gas has a very big effect on A, the support of life, and B, the condition of the climate. Carbon dioxide is a very special gas. We exhale carbon dioxide along with all of the other gases that we inhaled, but we actually exhale a greater amount of carbon dioxide in the blowout than we took in when we breathed in on the inhale. And that is a byproduct of respiration. I talked last lecture about respiration. You need to breathe. The more active you are, the more breaths you have to take per minute to get more oxygen in your cells, because your cells are metabolizing the sugars and the oxygen that you took in by breathing and eating, and expelling waste in the form of carbon dioxide and water vapor. Right? If you ever, your phone's a little dirty on the front, so you blow on it, get a little bit of condensation on there. That's actual water vapor coming out of your body as a result of respiration and metabolism. Your glasses are a little foggy or a little smudgy, so you on your glasses and you wipe them off. That moisture that comes out with every exhale is water vapor. The other component, besides carbon dioxide, of your metabolic waste. All right, so the carbon cycle. You click after the first introduction title slide, and you have the carbon cycle. Again, a picture similar to the picture of the nitrogen cycle, except this one is, of a pond and land environment instead of an ocean and land, but same premise. You've got terrestrial, land-based organisms and aquatic, freshwater-based organisms that are interacting with their local environment, and those two little ecosystems are interacting with one another. So you have some of the abiotic factors like the air and the clouds and the sunlight and the water itself, and some biotic factors that include the plants and the trees and the seaweed, or excuse me, the algae and the cattails and water lilies, the plants, the aquatic plant life, with fish and a snail and some other little aquatic organisms, and then a huge raccoon and a squirrel up there, some terrestrial mammals. So all of these organisms are interacting either directly or indirectly with one another and the abiotic environment around them. So the carbon cycle goes through a few less stages, and I think it's less complex than the nitrogen cycle. The carbon cycle is something that maintains a balance among the abiotic and biotic environments again. Okay, so carbon dioxide we know is a gas that is around us, and it makes up a very small percent of the atmosphere. We breathe it in and we breathe it out, but we breathe out more than we breathe in because of our metabolism. Now, the opposite of our respiration and metabolism is a chemical reaction called photosynthesis. And I say it's the opposite of our metabolism because it legitimately is the chemical reaction of metabolism in reverse. Okay? Quick definition: metabolism. Metabolism, what we do to process, to create our energy, and what we take in and what we give off. Our metabolism, in short, the chemical reaction is oxygen and sugar, oxygen and glucose, we take in. We make our cellular energy, and we expel carbon dioxide and water. So oxygen and glucose go in, carbon dioxide and water come out. Photosynthesis is the exact opposite. Water and carbon dioxide go in, sugar and oxygen come out. So the input of one, the reactants of one chemical reaction, are the products or the output of the other. The reactants are the products, and the products are the reactants. Okay? We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide. We take in sugar, we give off water. Plants take in water and carbon dioxide and give off oxygen and sugar. Okay? So photosynthesis is the opposite of metabolism or respiration, cellular respiration. Okay? So carbon dioxide free in the atmosphere, gaseous carbon dioxide, gets absorbed by plants in the presence of sunlight and gets added to the water that the plants absorbed through their roots. You link the carbon dioxide and the water, H2O and CO2, together with the energy of the sun, and you create this big molecule called glucose, C6H12O6. That's plant sugar, the basic building block of plant tissue. That sugar stays in the plant, becomes new plant cells, becomes new fruits and new leaves, new seeds and all of that. And what leaves the plant is the byproduct, the waste product, gaseous oxygen. Okay? So we rely on the plants to give us the air we breathe, the part of the air that we use that we breathe. And we rely on the plants to give us the food, the sustenance that we eat to metabolize to give us energy. So we take from the plants, but we also give back to the plants by breathing, urination and defecation and decomposition, right? Fertilize. So we die, break down, plants eat us, give off oxygen and make sugars for the next generation of organisms to eat the plants. So the person dies, feeds the plant lives, the next person eats the plant, kills the plant, dies, grows, makes soil for the next plant. So it's a continual cycle. It doesn't have to be people, it can be a raccoon. A raccoon breathes and eats and pees and poops and does the same thing that a snail or a crab or a squirrel does. It's all, animals versus plants, or animals in accordance or in conjunction with plants. So this cycle continues. What we take, plants give. What plants take, we give. And there should be a nice equilibrium, a balance. Okay. So that's sort of what's being shown here. And photosynthesis can occur underwater, in salt water or fresh water. That's why you have algae and seaweed and aquatic plant life. And respiration. Breathing can take place underwater. Fish have gills instead of lungs, but the gills carry out the same function of extracting oxygen out of the mixture of water that passes over them. Okay, so animals can live underwater and breathe with gills, or breathe through their skin, different types of animals. And animals can live on land, just like plants can live on land or in water. All right? So, it doesn't matter whether it is direct contact with the gaseous atmosphere or secondary contact through dissolved gases in surface waters. All right? It's all the same situation. So let's click it to the next slide where you have carbon cycle labeled. And there's only 4 steps, and they're bulleted. Starts with the atmospheric CO2, carbon dioxide, di is 2, O2, carbon dioxide, atmospheric gaseous CO2. That gets absorbed by plants and linked with water to make that big, fancy chemical formula of C6H12O6, sugar. You can link a bunch of sugar molecules together to make a starch. You can link a bunch of starch molecules together to make cellulose, wood, plant fibers. So it's all C6H12O6, just depends on how many of those you put together will govern the final product, plant product, whether it be a fruit, a flower, a leaf, a branch, a root, bark. All just different components, different numbers of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen units as glucose, C6H12O6. All right, and then animals eat the plants. They breathe in the oxygen that the plants give off, and they chew up, eat, swallow, digest some of that plant material. And that's how the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen get into the animal from the plant. And they breathe out carbon dioxide and water to be absorbed by other plants that haven't yet been eaten. So the cycle ends where it begins. Okay? And as long as we have a whole lot of plants to keep absorbing all of our carbon dioxide, and as long as there's a whole lot of animals that continue to produce carbon dioxide, and plants absorb it, you have a nice even-steven balance. Everything's cool and groovy. Now, humans have changed the environment. This is where we'll get into some environmental impacts of too much carbon dioxide. We have done everything in our power and beyond to disrupt this balance. We have done, by our population growing without too many natural barriers for our exponential growth, because we have medicine and technology, and we can keep places cool that are hot with air conditioning, and warm places with heating that are normally cool, and sanitize water, and grow with greater efficiency than the natural habitat would normally support using fertilizers and technology. We have medicine that heals the sick. So we have all of these things that give us an advantage over the natural world, but at the cost of throwing off the balance of the natural world. We also burn things. And as I mentioned in the beginning of this organic chemistry idea, where you burn something and you're left with the carbon ashes, there's also a massive release of gases when you burn something. All right, and I think we're upside down. This thing sucks. Okay, so we're back. You also release gases like carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide in the burning of things, especially in the burning of fossil fuels. I think we'll leave that whole ball of wax for another lecture. But I do want to introduce the imbalance of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, leading to some very significant and worrisome changes. Whenever this thing falls apart, it causes a lot more problems than it needs to. All right. So, carbon cycle. Now, if you advance to the next slide, it alludes to too much carbon dioxide. We see pictures of volcanoes erupting and smokestacks from some old factory or power plant putting all sorts of obvious pollution into the air. And some people, including an old lady riding a bike. All of these regular everyday occurrences add to the abundance, the increased level of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. As we introduced earlier, that only really less than 1% of the Earth's atmosphere is made up of carbon dioxide. Humans are very rapidly increasing that percentage at a rate much faster than even the healthiest, most lush rainforest full of plants could possibly absorb. Before the industrial age, before it was discovered that we could mine for coal, dig up carbon-rich, fossilized dead organisms that essentially is coal, and light that stuff on fire to create heat, to boil water, to make steam, to turn a turbine, to create energy, or to transform energy, the world was a much cleaner and quieter and more balanced place. But ever since the Industrial Revolution and the use of coal, and then heating oil, which is basically liquid coal, and then you compound that with deforestation, the removal of plants that should be scrubbing the atmosphere of carbon dioxide. These habitual practices have become a very negative component, throwing the balance of the carbon cycle way off and increasing the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that's having quite a deleterious effect. Okay? So carbon dioxide plays a very important role, in feeding plants. And it also plays an abiotic role in trapping heat in the atmosphere. We've done our astronomy, our space studies, and we know that Mercury, even though it's very, very close to the sun, its nighttime side is like negative 300 to negative 400 degrees Fahrenheit. At night on Mercury, there is no atmosphere to trap any of the heat energy absorbed during the day side, on the day side, and it very quickly becomes super, super freezing cold. Just like the moon. Our moon is relatively the same distance from the sun as we are. And the day side of the moon, it can be scorchingly hot because there's no atmosphere to block any of that radiation. But you get into the shadows on the moon, get into the dark side, or into a crater where it's shadowed, and you instantaneously have no heat energy because there is no atmosphere to trap that energy. Carbon dioxide, albeit only less than 1% of our atmosphere, is the major molecule that traps heat in our atmosphere and keeps us from freezing to death every night. If it could be 82 degrees out as it is right now, and tonight the temperature, when the sun goes down, we're facing the darkness of space, we have a nice blanket of atmosphere to trap that heat that builds up throughout the day. It may only go down to 65 degrees tonight. So we'll lose, 10 degrees of 12 degrees of heat energy, Fahrenheit. But because we have carbon dioxide trapping enough heat energy, we stay temperately warm. We add just a little more carbon dioxide, it's like putting another blanket on your bed. Ooh, that feels good. Then you wake up in the middle of the night like, I'm so hot, I'm sweating, you gotta take off this extra blanket I put on. Unfortunately, with the Earth system, we can't just take off an extra blanket. Once you put that on, by releasing carbon dioxide into the air by burning fossil fuels, you can't just take it off. You're hot. And then you'll have to either adapt or die. That's it. Imagine that at home. You can turn your fan on or open a window or take off your blanket if you're hot. Imagine if your only option was, deal with it or die. Kind of is your only option here as humans on Earth with what we do to our blanket of atmosphere and carbon dioxide. Okay? That's a 23-minute lecture. Carbon dioxide. We'll do more on that environmental tip down the road. Just wanted to introduce the cycle of carbon. And we'll move on to the water cycle next week. Hope you learned stuff. Carbon dioxide, a little bit's good, a lot is not good. Right? Don't overdo it. All right. Have a great weekend if this indeed is a Friday that this is posted. And we'll talk soon. Take care.